I would like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land on which this episode is being recorded and pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging. I extend that respect to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples today. Welcome to Can I Get a Refill? The podcast that offers a nurturing and inspirational space for honest and open discussions around career aspirations, wealth creation, motherhood, healthy relationships with others and the self, as well as an emphasis on physical, mental, and emotional well-being. Join us for lighthearted, authentic chats with like-minded women, as well as more in-depth discussions with industry professionals to support your ambitions and heal old wounds, as we empower you to regularly fill up your own cup. I'm your host, Steph Bruno-Newton, singer, writer, podcast host, mum, and recovering people pleaser. Thank you for pressing play today, and now let's get into the episode. Hello and welcome back to the Can I Get a Refill podcast. We've got a really great episode today that I've really been looking forward to recording. We're talking managing anxiety with psychologist Rowena Moore. Rowena, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, Steph.
We're really happy to have you here, but as I just said, I apologise to everyone if I sound a little bit low energy today. As most of you know, I have a son, Leo, 6 months, great sleeper, would not settle in his cot, had him in the bed between the two of us that I went head to toe because it was just a bit squashy. I got kicked in the shins on the hour every hour. I'm so hopped up on Barocco this morning. I just feel really blah. But,
Doesn't come across like
in the
that.
spirit of being authentic, I just wanted to tell people. But, thankfully I'll be doing most of the listening and you'll be doing most of the talking. So we're good for today. This is something I've been wanting to do since day one. You are also my psychologist, who I've just started seeing because I've had anxiety for years. Oh, I forgot to get the poll results off my stories. I put some stories this week.
Great.
And it's clearly something that is affecting nearly everybody I know, women. I don't know if men do or if they just, you know what, everyone does. Men just don't talk about it as much. I think we have more language to talk about. But I put polls up there of, how many have ever felt anxiety or anxious feelings, how many have sought treatment or considering it, and it was 100% said yes, they've done it, and 86% have sought treatment, and then a lower percentage had considered it. So it's clearly something that's really out there. I really want to jump in and talk about it. So we'll start by asking, tell us a little, this is a question everyone else hates, tell us a little bit about yourself, but so people know that you're qualified, tell us a little bit about yourself and the work that you do.
Okay, so obviously, as you said, I'm Rowena. I'm a psychologist. My official fancy title is, at the moment, a clinical psychology registrar. So I've done my master's in clinical psychology, and from that we do an extra 2 years of training, which I'm almost done with.
Oh, great.
And I, at the moment, work in private practice. I work with kids.
You work with kids a lot, do you?
Yeah, I work with across the lifespan.
Right.
So prior to doing that, I was working with kids with autism and ADHD.
Oh, great.
Lots of people with specific phobias.
Yep.
And now I work with kids, adolescents, young adults, older adults. I work with the whole gamut.
Yeah. Are you finding there's more and more children experiencing anxiety or more and more people, or are we just talking about it now and we have the language to label it as anxiety?
It's tricky because I guess the best thing I like about psychology is it's so, we're able to talk, right? We're able to use the language. And my training said that psychology made that an actual conscious decision that we're going to use words that everybody can use. We're not going to use Latin words like medicine does.
Which makes it very clinical when you're using the Latin words. Yeah.
And it sort of makes it out of touch for most people to use.
Doesn't feel relatable.
Yeah, and it's hard to remember these words and things like that, right? So psychology, we
it's
use
legal
words.
Studies. It's modus operandi.
Yeah, exactly, right? And that makes it a little bit less accessible.
Yeah.
While psychology made a conscious decision to use words that are a bit more accessible.
Yeah.
So I guess the question is, what is anxiety? Yeah, because anxiety, we would say, is like a part of fear. A fear is an emotional and physiological response to a real or a perceived threat. That would be the definition. Does that make sense?
We're going to talk about saber-toothed tigers because they always come up.
Yeah, right. And then anxiety, though, would be like the anticipation of a future event. Right?
That's what I was just going to say. sorry to interrupt, but I have heard once that depression is living in the past. This is very simplifying it, but depression is living in the past, anxiety is living in the future. Do you think there's some merit to that?
I can see the point of what they're saying, yes and no, and they're often quite interrelated, to be honest, depression and anxiety.
Okay.
And anxiety, it doesn't mean that we don't think about the past, because often we do. Like we think about, like anxiety is very much driven by what I've learnt in the environment and my life.
Yeah.
So things that are more scary because it's been a bad experience.
Because that's my anxiety personally. It is living in the future, worried about something might happen, purely because I'm basing it on something that might have happened in the past.
Exactly. That's where the definition is a bit tricky, because it is past related, and that's where like I struggle with that definition about anxiety and depression.
Yeah.
I guess anxiety, your brain is meant to be anxious. It's wired to be anxious.
Right. For safety.
Yeah, for safety. Like it's an evolutionary thing. And it's actually quite helpful, right? So I think you said to me prior to us starting that you did a poll.
Yes, yep.
And 100% of people said they felt anxious at some time.
Yep.
And that's great. That's normal. Okay. That's your brain doing what it's supposed to do.
Okay.
So I would say if we're thinking about that, I don't think anxiety's changed, because everybody feels anxious. Yeah. And you should. Yeah. There's times when things are anxiety provoking. You hear a noise in your house at night.
Yeah.
That's going to be anxiety provoking.
Okay.
You have to go to a meeting and you're not sure, or a job interview, you don't know what's going to happen. You're worried about the outcome of that. Of course, that's going to bring up anxious thoughts and feelings. Yeah. So
I used to perform a lot, and I found on the days that I was nervous, I'd actually perform a lot better.
Well, that's
if
exactly
I was
right.
chill, I probably didn't have enough of the ammunition to really put on a good show. So the butterflies
but that's what the
are good.
research says. The research says anxiety isn't just bad. We don't want to remove anxiety from our life.
Okay. Yeah. Butterflies are good for me. Severe nervousness to the point that I get IBS, don't love that. So
that's not
that's
helpful.
why I'm
though,
working with you.
Yes. That's not helpful.
Don't want that, you know?
There's a curve.
You want to enjoy life.
Absolutely. There's an anxiety curve, right? As anxiety increases, we don't concentrate as well. We don't perform as well.
Yeah.
Like what we know, so a simple task that will time you. You go and do this task, tell me how long it takes you, like something really fast. I don't know, doing a dot to dot or something, right? Something simple that you don't have to use too much brain power with. If we increase the anxiety because we're like, guess what? We're going to have someone watch you. You'll actually perform better because it's a simple task and you're like got some anxiety, and as that anxiety slightly increases, there's a perfect performance place for that. So we perform better. But when tasks get a lot harder and anxiety increases, we don't perform as well. And I think all of us have experienced that. That maybe we go into a job interview and we're slightly anxious and we're like, actually I nailed that once I settled down. And
every time I'm nervous I come out going, I nailed it.
Totally, but sometimes it can get well out of control, and
definitely,
and you can't
panic attacks.
And then you're not performing at your best, right? So it's sort of about finding that balance. Anxiety isn't all bad. Anxiety is useful.
Okay,
it's when it gets out of control.
So it's about learning to manage it.
Absolutely.
You're never getting rid of it.
No, and we don't want to.
No,
it's helpful. It makes me prepare more for something.
That's good to hear. Maybe people are like in fear of it and outrunning it when it's really just learning to make it. You know, like I always talk about sitting in the uncomfortable instead of like having alcohol or having drugs. You can sit in it. Like people are so scared to feel uncomfortable, but sometimes, all the time, that's useful.
The other add-on to that is anxiety is useful. Anxiety is normal in the brain. So when we're looking at that, has it increased over time? No. I don't think that that's the case. I think we talk about it more.
Yeah.
We're more aware of it.
Yeah.
But also it's okay to say it now. Like I think if we went back in time, it's like, especially maybe for men, we don't talk about it. No. We just put on that stoic face and we continue and we go home and we cope by drinking or hiding or avoiding or whatever that might be, right?
Yeah.
So I think we talk about it more. In terms of research-wise, anxiety disorders, that's where we're looking at anxiety is now a problem, and we're going to label that as a problem, Anxiety disorders have pretty much stayed the same over time. So the Australian research on this we've got an Australian national study on mental health and wellbeing.
Okay.
The last one was done in 2020 to 2022. And
right in the height of COVID.
it was,
okay.
but like the one before that was done in 2007, and it showed really minor differences between anxiety disorders and the people that reported having out of control anxiety.
Okay.
And I would think it makes more sense that it's gone up. Yeah, because of COVID, exactly right.
Yep.
And what it showed is across the whole population, it didn't change a lot. We saw in 16 to 24-year-olds, there was a slight increase of anxiety. And I think that comes from COVID because for that population in particular, COVID was a really difficult time. Yeah, obviously it's difficult for everybody.
No, it was absolutely the most difficult for teens because these are core memory-making times. You can't get your Year 12 formal back. You can't get those. And when you're living out of home and then you can do those things, you're tired and you actually don't want to. You cancel plans. So I really felt for teens who probably felt really stir-crazy.
And as well, like young adults that are starting their career, that maybe are at university working casual jobs that we're no longer able to do. Yeah, that brings a lot of questions about the future and how I'm going to cope. I expect that to go up.
Okay.
But then we've got differences in diagnostic criteria as time changes. We change our understanding of anxiety and what we will call a disorder. Because the last thing psychology wants to do is to pathologize a normal thing, right? So anxiety itself, I'm not going to pathologize that. That's normal to feel anxious. When it starts impacting you socially, psychologically, in your relationships, it stops you from doing the things that you really want to do, then we're starting to look at this is the problem.
Yeah.
And then we're diagnosing it more when you meet a certain criteria. It's happened for a really long period of time and then there's certain things that happen, right? So that's, in Australia, seemed to stay pretty stable. Some research from the US said it increased, but as I said, diagnostic criteria changed.
But the US has school shootings. Like, I mean, I feel like they've got a lot going on that their anxiety could be heightened because of societal reasons. You have to question though the role that social media would play in this, because when I am a very social person. I love making eye contact. Yes. I love engaging with people. Yes. When I have anxiety, I cannot make eye contact. I can't talk to people because I'm like, I can't engage with you right now. I just absolutely. I don't know if you remember. Was it 2004, it was so many years ago. I don't know if it was Olympics or Commonwealth Games. We had these girls that were rowers, and I cannot think of her name. And she just laid down for the whole race, and then they lost, and they were favourites.
Yes, I do remember.
And the three others were so angry. And now when I look back, I'm like, well, that girl clearly went into a panic attack because my body doesn't work. Like, simple tasks I shut down. So when I feel that way, my instinct is to hide, is to retreat. And this is why I'm thinking with younger people especially, when your whole life is online, you're looked at, you feel that you're being watched and you feel like you can't retreat. And I think that would heighten the anxiety. Do you think social media
It's a really tricky one, right? So that's one of the things that we hypothesize can make anxiety worse. But at the same time, like parents worry so much about social anxiety, about social media, sorry. I think social media can make us feel more seen. Yeah, it can make us feel more pressure. It can make us feel like other people are living these lives and then we compare it and that makes us feel anxious. At the same time, social media is great. I learn so much information. I get to connect with people that I might not connect with, or I get to stay in touch with people I want to stay in touch with.
It's also a place of self-expression.
Yes, exactly, which is like super cool when you look across people just sharing their journey, who they are. And so, yes, there's evidence that, of course, social media can increase anxiety and other mental difficulties. But a lot of the research about social media being really bad is pretty old, and it's about people that first went on social media that maybe felt really disconnected from society. Now so many people are on it, and there's so many positives to it as well. Like lots of the teens that I see and adults would say social media adds to my life. I can stay in contact with my friend that's overseas.
Yeah, I love that.
I can learn something new by finding something, right? The resources that is shared, it's actually really positive as well.
Yeah, I feel a sense of community, like especially if you're part of like those book club things and people are sharing their reads. I love that. And there's people you've never met that you feel really close with because they're commenting on the books you read and giving you recommendations. So, and with things like when I do singing gigs, like it is absolutely necessary to get more gigs. So
yes, exactly. Yeah. But it's also like it makes you feel more connected. It also makes you feel
it does
more of a whole person.
Yeah. And I always talk about it's up to you to sort of cater it to you and unfollow pages that make you feel bad about yourself and mute people that
yes, and figuring out what that is.
Yeah. And just, keeping your feed as something that's positive and making you feel good about yourself. What are the different ways that anxiety can present itself, and how can it affect us day to day?
Okay.
Not in the big things like performances, but just like day to day.
I guess, like I said, there's positives here too. Let's remember that, right? That it makes me perform better on certain things. It makes me be more prepared. So maybe I'm anxious about a job interview, so I go and read a bit more and make sure I know about the company.
Yes.
Yeah, that drives me to behave in a different way so I'm prepared. Maybe I'm anxious that, I don't know, someone's coming over and I decide I better clean up a bit more than I would. Right?
Mop to the floor before you got here. Leo's crawling. It
looks great. But like that is a helpful behaviour in some ways, right?
Well, that's because you care, right? So if you're going for a job interview, you're nervous because you want the job. I remember going for one.
Great.
I found another job that I really wanted, so I had this other interview and I really didn't care about it. But I got it because I was just not nervous at all in the interview, but it's because I didn't care as much. Here's my concern. Occasionally, I'm not saying every day, but when I get so nervous about something so stupid, like walking up to the shops, that's a problem.
Yeah.
Why would that happen?
Lots of different reasons why.
It's different for everyone.
It is,
yeah.
So I guess what I would say is, just like you're sort of saying here, is the other way that anxiety can get in the way and affect us is through, I guess, often anxiety leads us to avoid things that we don't want to do. Because it's a really great strategy to not feel anxious anymore. I've got a speech that I have to do at school. I feel really anxious and worried about it. And I feel so much so, it's better I just don't go. And guess what? The anxiety goes away. Right?
Is it a fear of looking foolish?
That might be. It could be with that one. It depends what's underneath it. Anxiety often affects sleep. I think most people would be able to say that. When we're nervous or anxious about something coming up. Like
you definitely don't sleep the night before.
That's right. Eating can be affected because that's how our nervous system reacts to those feelings.
When I'm really nervous, I can't chew. I just have protein shakes because I feel like I need sustenance, but I'm too nervous to stop and eat.
And our stomach does actually shut down. The way our nervous system changes when we're anxious is our stomach stops working. So like you said, an IBS type attack.
Because you're not in rest and digest.
That's right. We're not in rest and digest. So eating doesn't feel great. We're not hungry because our body is trying to deal with the threat that's here. So it stops doing that. Or it goes, you know what, I feel so anxious, I need to get rid of it. I'm going to vomit.
Yes.
I'm going to have diarrhea. I need to do a wee, whatever it might be. That our body's like, I don't have the energy to deal with this because all my energy has to go to focusing on this threat that I feel. And then sometimes when that passes, other people will notice that they eat more, that we go to those carbohydrate and sugary foods because they're easier to digest.
When Alan was proposing to me, he couldn't eat at the dinner. And then once he proposed, he's like, now I can eat and just eat. So I feel that.
Right. But we've all had stressful days and you go home and it's easier to reach for the chocolate or our body craves that. So eating is a way that it's affected too.
It's probably dopamine hit too.
It helps us, but it also helps that digestion, right? Concentration is often affected when we're feeling anxious because our brain is concentrating on the threat, the thing we're anxious about. So I can't concentrate on the task at hand and memory as well. Because my brain is so busy concentrating on this other threat and dealing with it.
I can't read when I'm in full anxious mode. I can't read. I'm not absorbing anything on the page.
Absolutely. And that's, I guess, one of those things with so many people experiencing and saying, you know, that ADHD type thing. Yes, we probably have an undiagnosed amount of people with it, but also anxiety brings about changes in concentration, which is that same feeling, right? I feel like I'm moving around. I can't settle. I can't do one thing. I'm all over the place. I'm not remembering. My attention's gone. I can't sit and watch a movie. This can be anxiety as well.
Yeah. I'm seeing that more and more. And attention spans too. People can't seem to sit and watch a movie. I think we're always used
But we have so much going on.
There's so much going on because I'm not saying that people years ago didn't have anxiety. I mean, they had wars, they had depression. So they obviously had it and just dealt with it differently. But I just think we have when I get anxious is when I'm always running late to do, and all I'm doing is thinking of everything I have to do that day.
Yes.
That's why I don't get anxious on holidays, because I don't, even though my holidays are still pretty structured, it's like, nothing bad's going to happen if I miss something or if I'm late for something. But yeah, it's definitely an overbooked schedule adds to my anxiety. I didn't say this beforehand, but I'll just quickly touch on phobias. I find them so fascinating. I have a phobia, which I won't discuss. It's a little bit personal, but it's something that started many years ago when I was in a domestic violent relationship, and then it sort of comes and goes, but I feel like it's gradually increased over time. And like people will look at me and think I'm a very confident person because I talk, and they're so surprised when I say I have anxiety, I have phobias. And all of a sudden, I'm not so embarrassed to talk about them too. That's sort of, I feel like I'm taking my power back when I name them.
Yeah, good.
But David Foster is this really amazing songwriter. He did discovered Michael Bublé, worked with Celine Dion, did the Bodyguard soundtrack, which I think is the highest selling soundtrack of all time. He is so successful. He's like a silver fox. He's very sexy, has a young wife. He has the most epic elevator phobia. And I was watching his documentary and he's like, it's absolutely taking over my life. I'll have these meetings in these high-rise New York buildings, and they filmed him trying to go in it, and it's that same thing that happens to me, with the sweaty palms, the not exhaling. Yes, fight or flight. He just couldn't do it. He had to walk up the stairs, and he goes, I arrived late, I arrived sweaty.
Yes.
It's just crazy to me that people have these things. Are there all different sort of factors of why phobias can start?
Of course, or anything that's like anxiety. I guess from a psychology point of view, there's a whole range of diagnoses that we have for anxiety, right? Like,
is a phobia
a
form of anxiety?
A phobia is a form of anxiety.
Okay.
Yeah, it would be under our chapter of anxiety.
Okay.
Yeah, so a phobia is an anxious response, right? Separation anxiety as kids, when it gets like beyond what we would consider developmentally normal, that would be something we diagnose. Selective mutism, where some kids really stop. Yeah, that's another form of anxiety. Yeah.
Yes.
We've got our phobias. We've got social anxiety.
Yep.
We've got panic disorder, agoraphobia, where we're scared to leave the house. Yeah. Then we've got our generalised anxiety, which is sort of more based on lots of different factors. We have health anxiety, which is quite specific to health.
Yes, I used to have a friend who was absolutely in panic about vomiting and couldn't eat in public, and
emetophobia.
called me crying from her car saying she couldn't get out and go to the food court because she was... And to me that sounds insane, but to her it was so real. And then to her, my phobia sounded insane, but to me it was very, very real. The threat was very real.
Because you've had different experiences, right?
Yeah.
And your brain has appraised these things that have happened in a different way, right? So like phobias, well, sometimes they just come because our brain makes an assumption about what's going to happen, or sometimes they come because we've had, like you said, a bad experience in the past, and our brain like links that together.
Yes.
And it doesn't want to experience it again. So the perfect sort of example about our brain, well, I don't know if it's perfect, but our brain linking things together is probably most people have an alcohol that you can't drink. That when you were young,
tequila.
Right. Mine would be like bourbon. I didn't even
Love
drink that much.
my brown spirits.
But,
it's the tequila for me.
No, I could not. Yeah. When I was young, it was probably one of the last things that I had in this horrific night. And vomiting tends to make you more scared of something. It really links it in with our brain.
So that even the smell of it triggers
straight away that response, and you get that gag reflex.
Yeah.
And that, like, really, when we're looking at it, tequila isn't a lot different to any other alcohols. But your brain is so linked in with that fact that you just, without even being able to think about it, gag, right? And have to avoid it because you just can't do it. Phobias are sort of the same. Yeah, I see lots of people with phobias, whether it's an elevator phobia or sometimes that's also linked to like
claustrophobia.
Like feeling trapped.
Yeah.
Like it might be linked to an aeroplane as well, because it's not the plane that's the fear, it's like you're trapped in there. Right?
Listen, I never had a fear of planes until I gave birth, and now I'm terrified. It's like it made me more nervous that I'm more valuable now because I have to guide a little
really
person.
Common. That's really common.
These plane crashes on the news aren't helping.
I
feel like there's been a lot. Lately.
And that's the thing, that our brain will notice it more and start to hold on to it a bit more.
No, that's true.
There's evidence for my fear.
It adds to the fear because you've found evidence for it.
But lots of women, probably men too, but I mostly hear it from women,
when they
have a lot more phobias, like ish. It's not really a phobia, but I don't know. I love roller coasters and things like that.
Yeah.
And I have always done that, but since having kids, like the thought of skydiving, I'd never do it. Yeah. It's too much for me
and
now.
I've interviewed my mum friends and they all said they feel nervous about little things. Like everything's making me nervous now that let's just all remain on solid ground. Let's only swim in the nets, like just let's eliminate but then also my whole belief system is you're going to die the day you're going to die.
Yeah.
So I'm like, I need to not worry because, about going overseas because I could die by slipping in my shower.
Absolutely.
So I'm kind of like, you really should live your life. But I'm finding it hard to talk myself out of that now that Leo's here. It's really odd.
But I can hear you doing that there, right? Like, here's some other evidence against that fear and why I should engage in it. Yeah. And I guess that's how we treat those things.
Yeah.
But specific phobias, like your question was, they come about from lots of different things. Our beliefs about, it might not be something bad happened in an elevator.
Yeah.
It might be something happened in a car, or
I
felt really anxious in a school environment.
Yeah.
And I felt trapped in the classroom. And now when I go in an elevator, that feeling arises.
Yes, it could be something that you wouldn't think would correlate, and it could be something like that. Is it there like a one-size-fits-all approach to manage phobias, or are they different? Like, are there certain things that you would do where you break it down and think of, well, what are the things that can go wrong? And is that what you do with phobias?
Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah, okay. And try and remove the fear around them because I always say, when you watch Scream,
yes,
once the mask is off and it's just like teenagers, I'm suddenly not so scared because you can stab a teenager.
Perfect.
But when it's a guy in a mask moving very fast,
yes,
I feel full anxiety when I'm watching those films. So is it a matter of breaking down the phobia and looking and going, well, what is the worst thing that can happen? And then when you look at it, you sort of think, well, maybe it's not that bad, the outcome?
Absolutely. I guess any anxiety across the board, choose an anxiety, right? The number one treatment, gold standard, would be cognitive behavioural therapy, CBT. And that basically means I'm looking at the link between thoughts, emotions, body sensations, and behaviours, and they all interlink. So a phobia of elevators, what is it that you're thinking? Yeah. What are you worried about? Yeah. What happens in your body? Yeah. What then do you do? So often it feels too much in that anxiety period. I hop in an elevator, I start shaking, I start sweating, and I can't tolerate that, so I leave and I avoid. That's more where anxiety comes in. We often avoid that feeling.
Yeah,
it feels like too much. Yeah, I guess. Yes, we look at the thoughts. We come up with some behavioural patterns and strategies like breathing or tolerating emotion, noticing that just because I have a thought doesn't mean that it's true.
Yeah.
Yeah, just and on top of that, looking at these underlying beliefs. What is the belief that happens when you're in the elevator? What does it mean about you? What is going to happen? Okay. Right? Because is it that I'm just not going to be able to cope? I'm going to have a panic attack and I'm going to be embarrassed, or I just can't cope.
Yeah.
And so we go underneath the fear. What is it that's really at the bottom of this?
Yeah.
And then we're pretty much going to have to face the fear.
Yeah.
And not just to face the fear, but to start giving our brain evidence against what we're thinking. Okay. So I have a client that I see at the moment who had a fear of elevators.
Yeah.
And that actually went with trains as well, being enclosed, so she couldn't catch public transport because she didn't have control. In the car, she could pull over and stop, right?
Yeah.
Control.
That's what's with me. When things are out of my control is when I get anxious.
Yes, and I guess
when I can't control all the elements.
Yeah, and beyond just control, the underlying thing for anxiety is an intolerance to uncertainty. I can't tolerate what I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen. And that scares the shit out of me, right? So maybe I avoid it. Yeah, maybe I come up with safety behaviours. Yeah. Like I'm really, really anxious about having a panic attack when I go grocery shopping. So
that happens.
It totally
I had a friend once who goes, when you see those shopping carts left in the middle of the thing, he goes, I know what they are now. It's when people have a panic attack and dump and run. And I'm like, yeah, I think I've done that once too.
Yes.
When you just feel too overwhelmed for crowds and noise. Totally. And I get overstimulated. For someone who used to guzzle Red Bull and go to raves till 7 in the morning, I any noise, I'm like, oh, it's too much if people are talking and the TV's on. I really get overstimulated that I get well overwhelmed.
And probably there's times when you do, because you're cup of tolerance is full, right?
Yeah.
You've had a stressful day, week, haven't slept enough, whatever else.
Yeah.
And then you have less capacity to move with those emotions.
And I'm sensitive. I'm sensitive with feelings. I'm sensitive to noise. I'm just sensitive to everything. So I'm sensitive to foods and, I get it. Yeah, it's all linked.
But people might come up with a safety behavior. So I'll just stay on the outside of the shops, or I'll bring this person with me, or I'll make sure I'm chewing gum. And then I'll cope
there's
with
always
that.
those little things. You know what? In the spirit of being very authentic, I'll talk about my phobia. It's been so embarrassing. I've only just told my best friends. So I have a neuromuscular disorder, as you know, where my muscles can go very rigid. It's gotten a little worse as I've gotten older. It's not supposed to, but for me it has. But I have a fear of walking in open spaces or crossing roads, specifically with high heels on, because to me, it's not that unrealistic because my legs can go stiff. And if a car comes and I freeze up, I may die.
Yep.
So to me, it's not that insane. So if I have a friend that I can hold, if I'm out with Alan, I don't care because Alan knows I don't have to explain it. He knows to hold my arm.
Yes.
I think I was telling you I was going to this really cool Batman musical thing with male friends. Ended up having the best night, wearing a slight heel, told them all about it. And they were like, oh, we can carry you across the road if you want and feed you grapes. Yes. Ended up, but they did forget throughout the night. I had to remind them, whereas that's why I was nervous because Alan will always remember. Ended up feeling great, but I was with, a group of people that I really care about and it just felt safe. But it comes up all the time and it's so ridiculous that someone like me who's been on The Voice, been on Millionaire Hot Seat, doing podcasts, sing gigs, I'm scared of crossing the road.
But it's not ridiculous either, right?
Yeah.
We also need to bring some compassion to this too because it's a real thing too. You have a neuromuscular thing.
Yeah, so to me, I can't think of the word I'm trying to think, but it seems not that unrealistic because my muscles can go rigid, right?
Absolutely.
So what's upsetting for me is that, and with the girl that can't catch public transport, it's how much no one would think about things like that. But for me, I have to plan my whole trip of where am I walking? Are there going to be open spaces? Should I take an umbrella if I feel like I need? That's my anchor.
Yes.
Do you know what I mean? It's so insane. To the point that I'll be watching movies. Say you watch Sex and the City and Carrie's always running across the street in high heels.
With traffic everywhere.
Do you know what I do? I sit on the couch and I warm up my legs. When I watch her, it's my trigger. I'm warming up my muscles because I'm seeing her run and feeling like I'm about to run. And if I don't warm them up, I can't get across that road. Yes. And I was listening to a podcast the other day, not about phobias, but she was talking about sort of the correlation between the mind and the body. And she took you through, it was a neurologist, and she took you through this thing. She's like, close your eyes, go to the fridge, open it up. You see a lemon cut in half. I want you to grab that lemon. I want you to squeeze it into your mouth. And everyone was like, you could taste that lemon. Sour thing, you could feel that sour feeling in your mouth and you weren't touching the lemon.
Yes.
It's the same as someone having a sexual fantasy.
Yes.
Do you know what I mean?
Totally.
You can get aroused watching a sex scene, but you're not actually having sex.
Absolutely.
So there is a correlation between the mind and the body. Yeah. So I don't know where I was going with that, but I just wanted to be authentic and talk about my phobia. It is embarrassing to me, but I shouldn't care that people will listen and think, oh, she's stupid. And maybe some people have their own phobias and will hear this and be like, great, look, she's doing lots of things and, I'm still trying to live my life. And I'm not stopping from going to things because that would be really sad. So I'm just trying to find ways to manage it.
Yes, which is what we've talked about, right?
Yeah.
That we don't want that to impede on you living by your values and the life that you want, right? That's the important part.
Oh, some lovely high heels in my wardrobe. I would love to wear them all the time.
Totally, right? And some of your fear, it's absolutely not silly. There's real biological things happening here that we also need to manage, right? But sometimes I guess there's maybe not is the guy that we talked about earlier, is going in the elevator going to cause a major ordeal? It feels like it for him.
Yeah.
It feels like you're going to die.
Yeah.
It feels like my body is out of my control and I'm worried that I'm going to faint or die or have a heart attack, right? Yeah. And so we look at slowly exposing to that, mostly because we're trying to give our brain evidence.
Yes.
It's not as much of a problem as I thought. So the girl that I was talking about, yes, we looked at her beliefs underneath. We looked at strategies we could use, We looked at, what this is costing her, what she wants from her life. I'm not here to say you have to use elevators just because you have to use elevators.
Yeah.
No, right?
Yeah.
But she wants to overcome it because it stops her from being able to go out in the city, and it stops her from doing these things. So she's like, this is costing me and I want to do that. That's cool. Yeah. I'm not here to say, well, that's silly, you have to be okay with spiders or whatever, right? Let's make real choices for yourself, not based on societal.
Because of me too, it wasn't always there. It started when I was in a violent relationship that was very much a mental working on me, and it was a Stockholm syndrome thing, and he made me feel like I was absolutely useless without him. Yeah. So then when he wasn't there, my legs wouldn't work.
Yes.
And he's long gone and it's still an issue. Okay, so all right, so that's interesting about phobias. I'm talking about anxiety in general. What sort of health issues can arise as a result of untreated?
Yeah, I guess it depends on the phobia, right? Or the fear or the anxiety, okay? Like, I guess it's a tricky one to answer because I guess anxiety instead can stop us socially from... Yeah, it can stop us occupationally. Yeah, and some people obviously get quite anxious going to the dentist, going to the doctor, and then it's starting to probably affect our health, right? Yeah. Otherwise,
because for me it's like digestive.
Yeah, but that's how anxiety works, right? Okay. So digestive-wise, it's about coming up with strategies to notice anxiety and starting to deal with the beliefs around it, noticing when the anxiety is helpful, noticing when the anxiety is getting a bit much. What can I do to empty my cup of stress? What can I do to look after myself more? What's happening in my beliefs? What can I do behaviorally to help me get through this? Because all emotions come and go. Anxiety is just an emotion that does the same thing, right? So it's more about, okay, digestively, like if it's getting badly out of control, if that's mostly emotional, like why is that happening? What are the beliefs? Does that make sense?
It does. And do you think that's something with your clients that you can work through with ongoing treatment without medication? I know some people find it helpful to have medication, but for me it's always been something I didn't want to rely on. I wanted to be able to fix it on my own.
So the research with anxiety and medication, I guess what I would say is medication is helpful. I see it as sometimes when it gets really out of control, it's like a ladder that pulls someone up and it takes you to a certain place. Medication doesn't get rid of all your anxiety. It doesn't get rid of your ruminations. It doesn't necessarily get rid of the behavioural components. It helps you take some steps if it's really bad. And it's like a safety net, I guess. The research would say we shouldn't be on the medication forever necessarily, depending on what's going on.
It does say that?
No, it does not.
It doesn't?
No.
Okay.
It says that people, when they come off medication, if they've got anxiety, can relapse. That's quite common. But if we're using psychology skills as well, that you have better chance of not relapsing. That we can use both or just psychology to overcome these things. Medication is not like the first go-to.
No.
It should be more these psychology strategies. Looking at how it's affecting me, what I can do about it, how my thinking's changing my actions.
Or it'll just keep coming up.
Exactly,
as triggers
right.
come up. But
medication doesn't get rid of all of it.
No,
that's
I
the
mean,
thing.
it's my personal belief that medication in any area is a Band-Aid, and I want to get to the root cause.
Totally.
Whilst I'm not against a combination of both.
And I'm not against it either. And for certain anxiety, parts of it, it can be useful. So like OCD, which is sort of like an anxiety response, it pretty much is. It's like a thought that occurs and I have to do something to make that thought feel better so I'm not so anxious. The research would say medication can be really helpful for that. And then we need psychological strategies on top of that so that it doesn't get worse. And maybe that means we are on medication for a while. Generalized anxiety, in general, psychology is the better strategy for that. And obviously medication can work faster and it's a bit easier, less time consuming at first. But the research would say that we still will relapse when we stop. And a lot of people would say it doesn't necessarily feel great to be on it for a long time. They can feel a bit constricted emotionally. And it's important, I think, that we should point out that if you are on medication for a long time, to get reviews, because medication changes, our understanding of it changes. I see some people, occasionally that come in with anxiety or whatever it might be, and they're like, I've been on this medication for 15 years. I don't know if it's working anymore. I'm feeling really stuck.
That's a long time. I'm always nervous of what a thing's doing long term with liver and all that. I mean, that's just me. I try to do a more of a natural lifestyle, but I understand it sometimes you need it as well.
Totally, but psychology can fix it. Absolutely.
Yeah,
That is what the research would say.
I'm always saying people service their cars. Why would you not service your emotions? And that used to be such a taboo thing, and with older generations around not getting therapy.
Yes.
And now people are talking about it left, right and centre.
And I really hope so. And I think the thing that I wish people knew about psychology is you don't have to come when it's really, really bad.
Yes.
Yeah,
yes,
like come and be like, you know what? I sometimes have anxiety. I don't know what's happening.
Have a top up.
Let's just let me understand this. Let's talk about my experiences.
Yeah.
What can psychology do for me? Trust me. I have people that come in, we might do 2 sessions. I'm like, look, you seem like you're going great.
Yeah.
Let's check in 6 months.
Yeah.
Oh, you're doing fine.
Yeah.
You know, if something pops up, if something gets worse, come see me, of course. Yeah. But I don't want to see you if you're doing fantastically well. Like, I want you to go and live your life. Yeah.
Well, your mental health's more important than your car, so I just don't understand why anyone would not want to,
so many factors,
lift the
right.
hood under your emotions. Have you got any little just quick tips for someone who's right in the midst of a panic attack? Because I really love Louise Hay, and she's always like, start with all these things now so that when you get to that point of panic or being diagnosed with cancer, that you're not going into full panic mode. You've sort of got those tools of how you can calm yourself down. But if someone's sitting on a train in the middle of a panic attack, what are some things, like, I don't know if it's breathing or things you tell yourself to just calm down a little to get through?
Totally. So I guess the best things here are breathing. Yeah. Breathing, it doesn't fix it immediately.
Yeah.
But what breathing does is it brings back oxygen to my cortex so I can think a bit better, and it stops the release of adrenaline, right? Or it slows it down.
Yes.
So lots of people say, oh, I do breathing, but it doesn't work. Okay, well, let's give it a chance first, right? We're going to do a bit of breathing. We're going to accept what's happening. Sometimes in panic, people feel panicked and then go, I don't want to feel this. And that increases the anxiety. I don't want this to stop. It's not going to stop. It's going to go forever. Increases anxiety. Yeah. Okay. Having a panic attack, it feels like shit and I'm scared. Yeah. I'm going to breathe. I'm going to start to be mindful of what's around me. Yeah. And not just be really internally focused. Right. So there's a great TED talk about breathing and labeling things around me. So take a big breath in. Say, oh, there's a chair.
Oh,
Take a
I
breath
like
in,
that. Because it's
breathe
bringing you
out.
into the moment.
That's right.
And out of your head. Because I read once, touch something. So if I'm feeling really anxious, when I would sit on the train, I would touch the seat in front of me and I'd feel a bit better because it was like my energy
Anchoring.
was... Anchoring.
That's what we would call it,
Yeah.
right? Anchoring and grounding to the moment that we're in.
Yeah.
Because when we're in a panic attack specifically, our heart's going really fast, we feel dizzy, we feel like we might faint. That's really scary.
It's the worst feeling in the world, and I'm so empathetic to anyone going through. I just want to give everyone a hug when I see them in mid-panic because it
Absolutely.
is terrifying.
It
It's
is.
awful.
And it comes with those thoughts, like, I'm going to die. I'm going to have a heart attack.
Like, I loathe that empty feeling of depression, but I feel for me it's that absolute panic is terrifying.
Because it is terrifying, and that's one of the key components of it. It's terrifying. I feel like I might die, right? So being able to, and it's so hard, right? And I guess the thing that I want to say is all emotions come and go. Nobody has a panic attack forever. Yes, it feels like it's ongoing forever, yeah. But we know that panic attacks are probably going to last 5 to 10 minutes, and then it's going to slowly dissipate.
Yeah.
Right? We've got to ride out the wave sometimes.
Yeah.
All emotions, the best advice I can say is they come up for a reason and we ride the wave out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The irony of me is I panic over the small things and I'm really good in severe crises like people dying, floods. I've been there where I then become the calm one that people talk to.
Which is when anxiety can be helpful though, because my brain suddenly goes, I've got to focus. Yeah, there is a threat here, and somebody's in imminent danger. They're choking. Yeah. Now this might have been a panic before. I lay in bed like, what if my kid chokes?
Yeah.
Right? And it happens in the moment, and you'll jump in.
I did it with a boyfriend's cat, and I went in and pulled the bone out of his thing, and I saved the cat's life. And I didn't think. I just went in to save.
You were in the moment.
Whereas for small things, I really shake. Like a huntsman in this house the other day. I absolutely lost it.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, that's really interesting. So we're seeing more and more. I really have a special place in my heart for domestic violence in society. It's just terrifying at the moment. And a lot of it can be from, men having mental health issues that are untreated. I mean, the Bondi Junction thing is a terrifying example of that. What do you wish that all children were taught from an early age to better prepare them for a healthy adulthood?
Okay. I guess the first part...
Because we weren't taught things in school, my age group.
Yes.
I believe now they might be bringing in a bit more.
Yeah. I guess the first part about men and untreated mental health, I think we do have a bit of a crisis in how we deal with mental health in our healthcare system.
Yeah.
There is, the hospital system is really, as we can see, struggling.
Yeah.
The psychiatrists, all of the emergency waiting room. We don't focus enough on mental health, and we have this group of people that struggle to get help. I guess the hospital system is often dealing with exceptionally acute problems, and then people with long-term problems can get left out. Mm-hmm. I see in our area lots of teenagers that the hospital won't take because they're not serious enough, but other services like Headspace might not take them either because they're too serious, right?
So they're left in limbo.
Yeah, and so then in private practice, we end up seeing them and hopefully finding a team around us of psychiatrists and GPs that can help, but we sort of are missing that. And then to see me, they're Medicare-wise, they're only getting 10 sessions, which often is not enough.
And you're
when
still
we're dealing
paying,
with these major issues.
and they might not want to pay. They might not want to
because they might not be able
treatment.
to. But then, like I have...
I know, I do wish it was all covered because some people might really be struggling
more,
financially.
Right?
Yeah.
Because the research would not say, despite what the government might say, that 10 sessions is enough. There's no research that says that. And there's been talks, this is all government and political, but that would be bad because more people can't get in. That's not the case. I see people on their mental health plan, like I said, I might see them 3-4 times and be like, you're sweet, go live your life, come back. I don't want to see people and waste my time that are fully thriving.
The money the government spends on military defence for wars that may not reach us, the war happening here is domestic violence against women, is violence on the street, is people not being well. It's a lot of it is mental health.
Yes.
I would like to see more funding in that area.
Yeah, and like I was saying about the teenagers, I have a good handful at the moment that have gone to more economical places that have said you're too serious because you've got suicidal ideation and things like this. Sent them to the hospital and the hospital said, well, yes, you feel suicidal, yes, you're self-harming, but that's not serious enough for us.
Self-harming is not serious.
Well, because they're dealing with so much. Unless you are actively suicidal, then we can't do much about it. Yeah.
And then by the time they get actively suicidal, they're not going to seek it.
And then once they're linked in with someone with me, the hospital often won't take them anyway. And so we have this missing group. Yeah, I see long-term patients with really serious problems, that the private sector is stuck dealing with. And not stuck, but we are the ones that catch it, that maybe they can only afford to come once a month or once every 6 weeks to last the 12 months. I see someone that has schizophrenia and they are on medication, and because they're pretty stable, they no longer can use the hospital. So I see them every 6 weeks because that's how their 10 sessions will last for the year.
I find
because they
terrifying.
can't afford to see me otherwise without that. And then I sort of feel for this because they're stuck. These people need more than that, but there isn't the help for it. Yeah. And so I feel for families in that as well.
I always feel for the parents when, everyone's pointing a finger of blame. It might not have anything to do with the parents that their son has a psychological condition. So. Absolutely.
And the way we deal with that. But I guess this is
sad.
A multifactorial problem, right? Yeah. It's like, yes, mental health, it's economics, it's social inequity, it's all of these things, yeah? I guess what I would like is kids to learn that all emotions are helpful and we can sit with all emotions, yeah? I wish that, and there's some great programs, so don't get me wrong, there's the Got It program, which the health runs in certain areas, not ours, but I know Western Sydney runs it, and they screen through schools, and kids that come up with high emotional problems or conduct problems or attention difficulties, they can get screened into the program. They learn about emotions, the use of them, how to manage them, different strategies, and the families get involved too, because it's a family issue as much as anything, right?
Look, I would have loved in primary school and high school if I would have been taught how to deal with my emotions rather than algebra. I've never once used algebra in my adulthood.
And I sort of totally agree with that. And I guess the thing that I see is some schools do, but the people that are coming to help, yes, that's great. I'm so glad for everyone to talk about their mental health struggles. But I think we need to get professionals to do it as well. I've done talks at schools before, but getting this happening is really important across the board, right?
Yeah.
On top of that, I would love parenting programs. Giving birth, yes. Birthing classes, great, useful. I'm not bagging them. But I would love a component to be added on emotions, parenting, the difficulty of this, the ways that we can parent better. The ways that we can help our kids overcome difficulties, the way that we can notice our triggers and help that with kids. And there are some really great parenting programs. There's Circle of Security. There's some videos online about that. And what I love about that specific program is it's about noticing that all of us have uncomfortable emotions. And maybe that is anxiety, but maybe it's overexcitement, or it's tears and upset, and that can affect how we parent. So, for example,
everything's filtering through to children, whether they can speak yet or not.
But like a kid, everybody sees it, and we all have bad days, so there's no judgment, right? Yeah. I'm not a perfect parent either, but we all have days where we might go to the park and we see a kid go, "I'm not leaving," and a parent absolutely lose their shit, right? Yeah. They're having a bad day, no judgment. But it's about learning that that's an uncomfortable emotion. When my kid says no to me, that raises up things in me. Circle of Security calls it shark music. I hear that Jaws song.
Okay.
That my kid is upset and angry, and that gives me anxiety. It gives me an uncomfortable emotion of people judging me, but also people judging. But on top of that, when I was a kid, my parents were like, "You don't treat me like that. You don't get to be upset."
Yeah.
And we learn that's an uncomfortable emotion. Instead of being able to go, "You're upset, of course you're upset." No one wants to leave the park when you're a kid. Yeah. Okay. We can sit with this emotion. Still going to go. Yeah. But we can sit with this, and it's okay. You're feeling this. Let's meet this emotion. We call it emotion coaching. Okay. It looks like you're feeling sad. What do you need? Do you need a hug? Do you need some time out? Do you need a drink? What is it? So that this emotion can come and it can go.
And do you think it would help to do also explaining? So I understand that you want to stay. The reason we have to go now is because Mum has to get to do this, and then she has to shop, and then she has to cook dinner. Oh, we won't eat tonight.
I do.
Okay,
I think that reasoning is a good idea.
I like including children in not so much the decision making, but in the day to day, so they know what's happening, rather than telling them. Say, this is what we're going to do now. Does that sound good?
And I think that's important, right? I have always parented like that, and I really think it's useful. Instead of saying, just don't touch the oven, I said don't do it. Don't do it because I told you not to.
It's dominating parenting, and that's what it was when we were growing up, and I don't like
think
it.
It's great for, I guess what we see in that case is that if we go back in time a bit, parenting was, the house was controlled with fear.
Yep. Without a doubt.
And sometimes violence, right? That's sort of what smacking is. Yeah. I'm going to control it with violence, and I'm going to control it with fear.
I'm highly against smacking kids. I don't see any benefit.
And, the research would say punishment in that capacity, it doesn't work. No. It's not teaching, right?
Do you remember the super nanny?
Yes.
And when that was years ago, and she'd put them in the naughty corner, I was like, this woman's great. Those kids were learning.
Yes, and it's about having a conversation. Okay, you don't touch the oven because it's hot and you're going to get burnt, right? Or
these would be the consequences if you do that.
And there's natural
not just
consequences.
Don't do it because I said so.
Yeah, that's right. And there's things that you have to do that you don't necessarily like too. That's part
and their
of being
instinct
human.
is to explore. That's
and to fight back. I want to see, when I see a kid, when I talk to a parent, if they've got a 2, 3, 4-year-old, I want to see some fight back, because that stage of life is about learning that I have autonomy over my choices, and that I have control over my environment.
I would imagine if you have a kid that fights back, they're going to be an adult. You can feel confident they'll take care of themselves because they'll speak back. But
it's also natural. This is why we have terrible twos, right? Terrible twos is just that 2-year-olds, 3-year-olds recognize I have my own thoughts in my head that you don't have privy to, and I can actually have some control. I don't want the blue paint. I want the pink plate.
Yeah.
And it doesn't mean that we pander to it every time, but it's about understanding that we all have developmental stages that are normal, right?
Yeah.
And I guess that's what I would like. I'd like that emotions aren't so scary. We can feel them, they can pass, and we can choose the behavior from it, right? When I said before about CBT being that gold standard for treatment for most things, noticing thoughts, emotions, body sensations, and behaviors, how they interrelate. I guess what I want people to know is just because I feel anxious doesn't mean I need to avoid. Just because I feel angry doesn't mean I have to yell. Yeah, I can actually feel that emotion and do something different and notice it, sit with it, accept it, not push it away, because it will come and go and it's giving me information. That's where I sit.
That's great. Look, we could talk and talk and talk,
Yes.
but I feel like we've covered a really good place, you know, touching the surface of people going through anxiety and finding hope for how they can manage it. What are some great resources for people really struggling, and where can people find you if they would like to take your services?
Okay, so one of the best resources is actually on Lifeline. They've got a page that's a toolkit.
Yeah, everything will be linked in the show notes too, so everyone can find that.
Yeah, perfect. That link there has all my favourite things under it.
Yeah.
So it's got Mood Gym, which is a free CBT program you can do yourself with different activities and things you can do. There's one called My Compass, same sort of deal.
Yeah.
Try them out, see how they feel. And there's an anxiety and worry program under there too. All different, like one's Black Dog. They're all different services. Also like Smiling Mind, which is a meditation, breathing.
Yes, I know that one.
Yep. To help, you know, bring down anxiety and increase insight into what I'm feeling.
Yeah.
That's a really great resource because that page has everything you could want to know.
Yeah.
Given you a link for sane.org as well. They're fantastic for mental health in general. They've got a fact sheet and guide. The one that I've given you is for anxiety, but you can have a look through the website. There'd be ones for OCD, specific phobias, all sorts of things. They're a really great resource. And that goes through fact sheets, but also ways we can do with treatment, where you can go. And the other one I've given you is cci.health.wa.gov.au. It's a Western Australian government website. It has so many great resources. So they have on there an anxiety fact sheet, I guess. There's a whole heap, and a workbook as well that you can go through about worry. And they have that for all sorts of mental diagnosis, I guess. Yeah. So the one that I've given you is for anxiety, but you can have a look through. It's got things on assertive communication.
Yeah.
It's got things about eating disorders, depression.
Oh, great.
Lots of information so you can understand it, but also workbooks that you can work through on your own time.
Oh, that's great. Look, there's a lot of resources in this country. I mean, I can diss at saying I'd like to see more help, but we do have a lot at hand.
And they're all
it's
free, the
wonderful.
ones that I mentioned.
That's wonderful.
Yeah, which is great.
And yourself, are you taking on new clients? Do we mention where we can find you, or are you too booked
At the
up?
moment, I'm in private practice,
Yeah,
which is in Caringbah at Life and Mind Psychology.
Yeah.
I'm on LinkedIn as well. Feel free to reach out. Anybody.
Wonderful. This has been so helpful. If no one's told you today, we appreciate you. Thank you for spending your time with us and
Thank
really
you for
sharing
having
some
me.
really useful information. And everyone, I hope you do something in the next week to fill up your cup, but I also hope that you do consider seeking treatment if you're going through some anxiety or anxious feelings. It's helped me, helped lots of people. Catch you in the next episode. There is no resource more valuable than time, and I thank you for spending your time with us today. Your voice is so important, and we would love to hear which topics you would like discussed in future episodes. Please reach out by Instagram at Can I Get a Refill Podcast or on our private Facebook group to let us know. If you enjoyed this or previous episodes, we would be so grateful if you could please subscribe, rate, and review to help our voices continue to be heard. Catch you in the next episode.